Hi, Reddit. My name's Alex, and 5 years ago, my world flipped upside down. I thought I was just an average guy, worked hard, took care of my family, and believed in love and loyalty. Back then, I was married to a woman named Jessica. She was stunning, with piercing green eyes and a smile that could light up any room. I thought she was my soulmate. But as life has a cruel way of teaching us, not everything is as perfect as it seems. 5 years ago, Jessica and I ended things in the most devastating way imaginable. I found out she was cheating on me with someone I considered a close friend, Mark. The betrayal cut so deep that I didn't think I'd ever recover. The divorce was messy, bitter, and left me with scars I've been carrying ever since. Fast forward to now, I've built a new life for myself. New job, new city, even started dating again. Things were finally looking up. But then, last night, my phone rang, and I saw a name I hadn't thought about in years, Jessica. My first instinct was to ignore it. What could she possibly want after all this time? Curiosity got the better of me, though, and I answered. Her voice was shaky, almost unrecognizable, but there was no mistaking it. "Alex, please. I need your help," she said, her words drenched in desperation. I didn't say anything for a few seconds, just letting the silence hang between us. A flood of memories came rushing back. The lies, the betrayal, the pain. I wanted to hang up so badly, but something about her tone stopped me. "What could you possibly need from me, Jessica?" I finally asked, my voice cold and distant. Her reply was unexpected. "It's not about me. It's about Mark, and something you need to know." Those words hit me like a truck. I hadn't thought about Mark in years, and now she was dragging him back into my life? I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. But before I could respond, she dropped a bombshell that left me completely stunned. "I'm scared for my life, Alex. He's not the man you think he is." I'll admit, my heart skipped a beat. This wasn't the Jessica I remembered. Confident, manipulative, always in control. This was a woman who sounded terrified. But was it real? Or was this just another one of her games? I decided to hear her out, but deep down, I knew one thing. Whatever she was about to tell me, it would open old wounds I thought had healed. And so, here I am, Reddit, sharing this with all of you. I haven't decided if I'll help her yet, but one thing's for sure. This call is just the beginning. After that call, I couldn't sleep. Jessica's words replayed in my head like a broken record. "He's not the man you think he is." What was that supposed to mean? Mark had already ruined my life once. Was she saying he was still capable of more damage? Or was this some twisted attempt to drag me back into her mess? The next morning, I found myself staring at my phone, debating whether to block her number or call her back. Against my better judgment, I decided to text her. If this is some kind of game, Jessica, I'm not interested. Explain what's going on or lose my number." It didn't take long for her to reply. "Jessica, meet me at Clover's Cafe at 1 p.m. I'll explain everything. Please, Alex. It's important." Clover's Cafe, a place we used to go to during our marriage. Of all the places she could have chosen, she picked that one. Was it nostalgia? A manipulation tactic? I couldn't tell, but my curiosity got the better of me. I told myself I'd hear her out, then walk away for good. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting in the corner booth, her hands wrapped tightly around a coffee cup. She looked different, gaunt, almost frail. Her once bright green eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. It was a stark contrast to the confident woman I used to know. "Thanks for coming," she said quietly as I slid into the booth across from her. "Cut to the chase, Jessica. What's this about?" I asked, keeping my tone as detached as possible. She hesitated, glancing around the cafe as if someone might be listening. Then, she leaned in and whispered, "Mark isn't who you think he is. He's dangerous, Alex." I rolled my eyes. "You dragged me here to badmouth the guy you cheated on me with? Spare me the drama." "No," she said sharply, her voice cracking. "It's not like that. You don't understand. He's been watching me, controlling me. And it's not just me. He's hurt other people too." I froze. There was a rawness in her voice I hadn't heard before. But after everything she'd done, trusting her wasn't exactly easy. "You expect me to believe that?" After everything you put me through? I shot back. Jessica's hands trembled as she set down her cup. I know I don't deserve your trust. I know what I did to you was unforgivable. But Mark, he's a different kind of monster. I'm scared of him, Alex. I don't know who else to turn to. Her words hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. Part of me wanted to get up and leave, but another part couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't telling me. Why now? I asked, narrowing my eyes. Why reach out to me after all these years? She looked down, her voice barely audible. Because I think you're the only one who can stop him. Stop him? What was that supposed to mean? This wasn't making any sense. But before I could press her further, she pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. Look at this, she said. Reluctantly, I picked up the phone and began scrolling through the messages. They were from Mark. At first, they seemed normal, basic stuff like checking in or making plans. But then they took a darker turn. Threats, demands, photos of Jessica in places she hadn't realized she was being watched. My stomach churned as I read them. If this was real, Mark wasn't just a cheater. He was a predator. But why was she coming to me? What could I possibly do? You need to go to the police, I said, sliding the phone back to her. I tried, she said, her voice breaking. But they didn't take me seriously. They think I'm just a bitter ex trying to cause trouble. And what do you think I can do? I asked, my frustration mounting. She looked me in the eyes, tears brimming. You know him, Alex. Better than anyone. You know what he's capable of. Her words hit a nerve. She wasn't entirely wrong. I knew Mark better than most, and looking back, there had always been something off about him. But did I really want to get involved in this mess again? I stood up, tossing a few bills on the table. I'll think about it. But don't expect me to clean up your mess, Jessica. As I walked out of the cafe, a sense of unease settled over me. I wanted to believe this was her problem, not mine. But deep down, I knew that call had already set something in motion, something I couldn't walk away from. Leaving Clover's cafe should have felt like closing a door, but instead, it felt like opening Pandora's box. Jessica's shaky voice, those haunting messages from Mark, and her terrified eyes were stuck in my head like a bad song on repeat. As much as I hated to admit it, she wasn't the type to fake fear like that. Manipulative? Yes. Terrified? Not the Jessica I once knew. But then again, who was she now? Back at my apartment, I tried to distract myself. Watched TV, worked out, even called my buddy Chris to catch up, but nothing helped. The unease lingered like a shadow. Finally, after hours of pacing, I did what I promised myself I wouldn't. I looked up Mark. It wasn't hard. His social media was still public, and it didn't take long to see that his life seemed picture-perfect. Expensive trips, flashy cars, and a girlfriend who looked like she'd walked off the cover of a magazine. But as I scrolled deeper, the picture got darker. Comments from random women accusing him of harassment, vague posts from accounts that tagged him in cryptic messages like, "You know what you did." It didn't prove anything, but it added weight to Jessica's claims. I thought about calling her to dig for more details, but stopped myself. This wasn't my problem anymore. Whatever mess she'd gotten herself into, I didn't owe her a thing. But just as I convinced myself to leave it alone, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Stay out of it, Alex. This doesn't concern you. I froze. My stomach dropped. How did they know? Was it Mark? Jessica? Someone else entirely? My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. A part of me wanted to delete the message and pretend I'd never seen it. But another part, the stubborn, angry part, wasn't about to be intimidated. Me, who is this? The reply came almost instantly. You've been warned. Last chance. That was it. 2 short messages, but they spoke volumes. Whoever it was, they wanted me to back off. And suddenly, it wasn't just about Jessica or Mark. It was about me, my safety, my boundaries. The next morning, I decided to do something I swore I wouldn't. I called Jessica. She answered on the first ring. Alex. Her voice was laced with relief, as if she'd been holding her breath since our last conversation. Someone just texted me, warning me to stay out of this, I said, cutting straight to the point. Care to explain? Silence. For a moment, I thought she'd hung up. Then, In a hushed voice, she said, "He knows, Alex. He knows I talk to you." "Knows how? Have you been spying on me?" I snapped. "No. I swear I didn't tell him anything," she said quickly. "But he's resourceful. He has people watching me. He could have seen us at the cafe." I didn't know whether to believe her, but the pit in my stomach told me she wasn't lying. Mark had always been the charming, life-of-the-party type, but I was starting to see a different side of him, and it wasn't pretty. "What exactly do you want from me, Jessica?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. "I need your help to stop him," she said, her voice trembling. "You're the only one who can. You know how he thinks." "I don't even know what he's done," I shot back. "You keep saying he's dangerous, but you haven't given me anything concrete." She hesitated again. "He's been blackmailing women, Alex. Not just me, others too. He records them without their consent and uses the footage to control them." My blood ran cold. This wasn't the petty drama I'd expected. This was serious, illegal, even. But still, why me? Why now? "Go to the police," I said firmly. "Take the messages, the evidence, everything." "I told you, they won't help me," she said, her voice breaking. "But if we work together, we can expose him. Please, Alex, you're my last hope." Her last hope. The irony wasn't lost on me. After everything she'd done to destroy my life, she was now asking me to save hers. Part of me wanted to hang up and let her figure it out on her own. But another part, the part that still remembered the woman I used to love, couldn't turn away. "Fine," I said finally. "I'll help you. But if I find out you're lying or manipulating me again, Jessica, I'm done. For good." "Thank you," she whispered, relief flooding her voice. "You have no idea how much this means to me." As I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling that I just made a deal with the devil. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about Jessica anymore. If Mark really was the monster she claimed, it was time someone stopped him. And like it or not, that someone might just have to be me. I didn't sleep much after that call. My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer and doubts I couldn't shake. Was Jessica telling the truth? Could Mark really be as dangerous as she claimed? And if so, how far was he willing to go to protect his secrets? The next day, I decided I needed more information. If I was going to involve myself in this mess, I couldn't just take Jessica's word for it. I had to see for myself. I started by searching through my old contacts, looking for anyone who might still be in touch with Mark. After a few dead ends, I hit pay dirt. My old friend Eric. Back when Jessica and I were married, Eric and Mark had been close. If anyone knew what Mark had been up to, it was him. I called Eric, and after some small talk to catch up, I steered the conversation toward Mark. "Man, I haven't talked to him in ages," Eric said, sounding genuinely surprised. "Last I heard, he was doing some big real estate deals." "Why? What's up?" "Just curious," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. "You ever hear anything off about him? Like, stuff that didn't add up?" Eric hesitated. "What are you getting at, Alex?" "Look," I said, lowering my voice. "Jessica came to me. She said Mark's been doing some shady things. I'm trying to figure out if there's any truth to it." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Eric sighed. "You didn't hear this from me, but yeah, I've heard some rumors. Nothing concrete, but a couple of people have mentioned him being sketchy. Deals that didn't feel right, people disappearing from his life. That kind of thing." "Like what?" I pressed. "Blackmail," Eric said quietly. "He uses dirt on people to get what he wants. And if they don't play along well, let's just say he has a way of making their lives hell." My stomach churned. Jessica hadn't been lying, not completely at least. If Mark was capable of blackmail, who knew what else he'd done? "Thanks, Eric," I said, my mind racing. "This helps." "Be careful, man," Eric said. "If you're poking around in Mark's business, he's not the kind of guy who lets that slide." After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of validation and dread. Jessica's story was starting to check out, but that only made things more complicated. If Mark really was a predator, how could I expose him without putting myself, or anyone else, in danger? Later that night, Jessica called again. "Did you find anything?" she asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "I talked to someone," I said. They confirmed some of what you said, but I need more proof, Jessica. I'm not risking my neck on hearsay. I have proof, she said quickly, but I can't give it to you over the phone. Can you come over? I hesitated. Going to her place felt like crossing a line I wasn't sure I was ready for. But if she really had evidence, I needed to see it. Fine, I said. Text me the address. When I arrived at Jessica's apartment, it was clear she wasn't living the high life anymore. The building was run down, and the neighborhood felt sketchy. She opened the door before I could knock, pulling me inside quickly. Thanks for coming, she said, locking the door behind me. Her hands were trembling, and she looked even more worn out than before. Where's the proof? I asked, cutting straight to the point. She led me to her small living room and handed me a USB drive. It's all on here. Videos, messages, everything. I stared at the drive in my hand. This was it, the evidence I needed. But before I could say anything, there was a loud bang on the door, followed by a voice that sent chills down my spine. Jessica, open up. I know he's in there. It was Mark. Jessica's face went pale, and my heart started racing. How had he found us? And what was he planning to do? Don't say anything, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But it was too late. Mark wasn't waiting for an invitation. The door burst open, and there he was, taller, angrier, and more menacing than I remembered. His eyes locked on me, and his lips twisted into a cold smile. Well, well, he said, stepping inside. Look who decided to play hero. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I stood my ground. What the hell are you doing here, Mark? I should be asking you the same thing, he said, his tone dripping with venom. You really think you can dig up dirt on me and walk away unscathed? I'm not scared of you, I lied, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. Mark laughed, a low, chilling sound. You should be. You have no idea who you're messing with. He took a step closer, and I noticed the faint glint of something in his hand, a knife. My heart raced as I realized just how dangerous this situation had become. But before he could get any closer, Jessica stepped between us. Stop it, Mark, she said, her voice trembling but firm. You've done enough damage. Just leave us alone. He looked at her, his expression darkening. You think you can turn him against me? You're pathetic, Jessica. Both of you. And then, just as quickly as he'd appeared, he turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. Jessica and I stood there in stunned silence, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. We need to finish this, I said finally, clutching the USB drive. Once and for all. And in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. Jessica locked the door behind Mark, her hands shaking so badly that she fumbled with the latch. I stood frozen, gripping the USB drive tightly, my mind racing. Mark's sudden appearance wasn't just a coincidence. He knew exactly where to find us. I need to see what's on this, I said, holding up the drive. Jessica nodded, her face pale. There's a laptop in the bedroom. We moved quickly. Inside the cramped bedroom, Jessica set up her laptop and I plugged in the drive. A folder popped up, filled with files labeled with dates and initials. I clicked the first one. A video? The screen filled with an image of Mark sitting across from a woman in an office. Her face was tear-streaked as he slid a piece of paper toward her. His voice was calm but chilling. If you don't do exactly what I say, this goes public, he said, tapping his phone. Your husband, your kids, everyone will know. Jessica stood behind me, her voice trembling. He records them without their knowledge, then uses it to control them. I wasn't the only one. I clenched my fists, anger bubbling inside me. This wasn't just blackmail. It was pure exploitation. I clicked through more files, messages, photos, more videos. Each one painted a darker picture of who Mark really was. This is enough to bury him, I said, my voice cold. We're taking this to the police. Jessica hesitated. What if he finds out? He'll come after us, Alex. I turned to her. He already knows, Jessica, and I'm done running. But as I said it, a sinking feeling settled in my gut. Mark wasn't the type to go down without a fight. The next morning, I went to the police station with the USB drive. Jessica stayed behind, too scared to face Mark's potential retaliation. I handed the evidence over to a detective, explaining everything I knew. The detective, a grizzled man named Harris, leaned back in his chair, scanning the files. His expression shifted from skepticism to shock as he watched the videos and read the messages. "This is serious," he said, his tone grim. "We'll open an investigation, but if this guy's as connected as you say, it won't be easy." I left the station feeling a small sense of relief, but it didn't last long. That afternoon, Jessica called me in a panic. "He knows, Alex," she cried. "Mark just called me. He said if I don't get the drive back, he'll ruin both of us." My stomach dropped. How had he found out so quickly? I tried to calm her down, but before I could respond, there was a loud crash on her end of the line. "Jessica? What's going on?" I shouted. Her voice was frantic. "He's here. Alex, he's—" The line went dead. I grabbed my keys and bolted out the door, fear and adrenaline surging through me. Mark wasn't just trying to scare us anymore. He was making his move. When I reached Jessica's apartment, the door was wide open. Inside, the place was trashed. Furniture overturned, shattered glass on the floor. But Jessica was nowhere to be seen. And then I saw it. A note pinned to the wall with a knife. "Stay out of this, Alex. Last warning." My hands trembled as I ripped the note down. Mark had escalated, and Jessica was in danger. This wasn't just about exposing him anymore. It was about survival. I stood in the wreckage of Jessica's apartment, my pulse pounding in my ears. Mark had her, and I had no idea where he'd taken her. The note in my hand felt like a cruel taunt, daring me to make my next move. I needed help. I called Detective Harris and told him everything. He didn't seem surprised. "We'll send a patrol to her place and put out a bulletin for Mark, but if he's on the move, this could take time." Time we didn't have. Harris's advice was clear. Stay out of it and let the police handle things. But I knew Mark wouldn't wait. He'd hurt Jessica, or worse, if I didn't act fast. Ignoring the detective's warnings, I started digging into Mark's life. I remembered Eric mentioning Mark's sketchy real estate deals. A quick online search turned up a few properties under his name, including a warehouse just outside of town. It was remote, private, the perfect place for someone like Mark to keep secrets. I didn't think twice. I grabbed a tire iron from my car and drove there. The warehouse loomed in the distance, its windows dark and foreboding. My car's headlights cast eerie shadows as I pulled up, killing the engine to avoid detection. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the crunch of gravel underfoot as I approached the door. It was unlocked. I slipped inside, gripping the tire iron tightly. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and oil. In the faint moonlight streaming through the windows, I saw them. Jessica, tied to a chair in the center of the room, and Mark, standing over her. He looked up, a twisted smile spreading across his face. "You're predictable, Alex. I knew you'd come." "Let her go," I said, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. Mark laughed, his tone mocking. "And what are you going to do? Hit me with that?" He gestured to the tire iron. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "You think you're untouchable, but I've already turned over everything. The police are coming, Mark. It's over." His smile faltered for a moment, but then he shrugged. "If I'm going down, I'm not going alone." Before I could react, he lunged at me. We grappled, the tire iron slipping from my grasp as we crashed to the floor. Mark was stronger, but I fought with everything I had, fueled by anger and desperation. In the chaos, Jessica screamed, "Behind you, Alex!" I saw it too late, Mark reaching for the knife he dropped. But just as he raised it, a blinding light flooded the warehouse, followed by the sound of sirens. The police had arrived. Mark froze, his expression shifting from anger to panic. Before he could make a move, officers stormed in, guns drawn. "Drop the weapon," one of them shouted. Mark hesitated, then let the knife clatter to the floor. He was cuffed and dragged away, still snarling threats. Jessica was untied and helped outside by an officer, her face streaked with tears. I followed, my legs shaky, the adrenaline finally wearing off. As we stood in the cold night air, Detective Harris approached me. "I told you to stay out of it," he said, but there was a hint of respect in his voice. "Good thing we got here when we did." Jessica turned to me, her voice trembling. "Thank you, Alex. You saved my life." I didn't respond right away. My mind was spinning, trying to process everything. Mark was finally caught, his crimes exposed. But as I looked at Jessica, I realized this wasn't over for either of us. "I just hope it's enough to keep him locked up," I said quietly. For now, at least, the nightmare was over. But as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, I couldn't shake the feeling that Mark's shadow would linger in our lives for a long time to come.